Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGamingTech.com video we're going to be discussing recent comments from Sony and the losses that they incurred on the PlayStation 3. And they have assured investors that this will not be the case with the PlayStation 4. The PS3 was a ridiculously expensive time for Sony. In fact, the PlayStation 3's launch ended up costing Sony between 2007 and 2008 about $3.5 billion US, which is exorbitant. Now, in case you're wondering why that is, we'll go into that in just a moment. I'm just going to give you guys a couple of quotes first. SCE's boss, Andrew House, was speaking, and he said, and I quote, that we will not generate anything like the losses we did on the PlayStation 3. The CFO, meanwhile, Chief Financial Officer, also said that, and I quote, the amount of investment in the PS4 is much, much smaller. However, I cannot give you an absolute amount, so they're not being too forthcoming. Now, one of the reasons behind the PS3's rather expensive cost was quite simple, the cell processor. We know, of course, that they helped to create it with a hell of a lot of R&D, research and development. Nevertheless, despite the fact that the system actually sold more expensively than, say, the Xbox 360, it didn't matter, and each PlayStation 3 that was sold ended up costing Sony money in the long run. Now, of course, eventually Sony started to make profit on the PlayStation 3 as manufacturing costs started to be reduced, and manufacturing processes, of course, also became more refined. However, certainly at the start, it wasn't particularly good for Sony. They also, of course, started to make some money back from software sales as well. However, rather obviously, they didn't really want to go through that whole process again, as rather obviously a more expensive console reduces sales, right? If you've got two consoles and you're trying to decide between them, let's face it, one of the major deciding factors for most people anyway is going to be the cost, particularly as both the PS4 and Xbox One this time around are coming out at pretty much the same time and around Christmas. So you can imagine just what the thoughts are going to be on the minds of many gamers, especially at the very expensive time of the year. So of course this time around Sony went with a more established architecture, the x86/64-bit, and of course they also went with AMD, who had also done a lot of the research and development themselves. So PlayStation's architect Mark Cerny, all he asked basically is for them to change a few bits and pieces here and there, and of course they did work very closely with AMD. But the key point is that AMD themselves had done most of this research before, so it didn't require anywhere near the level of investment to basically incorporate already existing pieces of technology and create the console. Obviously, once again, just to reiterate, there were some PlayStation 4 exclusive changes, if you will, mostly to do with the compute units on the PS4 as well as the buses and so on. But primarily, they basically used the AMD Jaguars, which of course were existing pieces of technology that they basically adapted to fit their purposes, rather than pretty much having to create everything from the ground up, which obviously increased the price, which is good news for consumers. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's been a fairly brief one, but I will hopefully see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.